When strange, unidentified objects have appeared in the sky, there are often bizarre side effects that accompany them: electromagnetic interference, symptoms of radiation poisoning, missing time, and sometimes interaction with the occupants. But there is an aspect of the phenomenon which has been underrated. When the Advanced Weapons Systems Application Program focused their sights on the infamous Skinwalker Ranch and the surrounding region, they found that sightings of UFOs were correlated with shadowy figures, poltergeist behavior, and instances which seemed to be connected to human consciousness and perception. In the rare interviews with two members of AAWSAP, Dr. James Lakatsky and Dr. Colin Kelleher, there are a multitude of interesting comments suggesting that the UFO phenomenon has been able to manipulate our perception and alter our cultural variables. In this video, I won't be able to tell you why this connection exists, but what I can do is show you that it is not new. For thousands of years, humans have thought that visitors from the sky or from space and visitors from the spirit world were not mutually exclusive. But tread carefully, for not all is as it seems. My name is JP, and welcome to Realm Travel. In this video, we'll be talking about Sirius, the dog star. And any mention of dogs is a perfect segue into our sponsor, Compadre. Compadre is owned by my aunt and uncle, and suffice it to say, without them I wouldn't be able to make videos at all. So a way for me to give back is to plug their company every way I can. Compadre has an amazing harness system called the Omni No-Pull solution that was built to completely revolutionize the way people walk their dogs. It has built-in padding, dual attachments, and so many customizable options to stop strong pulling dogs, but without hurting them. And it establishes actual communication between the two of you so you can love every walk. If you want to support this channel, please head over to compadre.com, that's COMPAWDRE.com, and use code JPT2026 for 10% off of your order. Thank you so much, Compadre, for sponsoring this video. Now back to the show. In the last episode, we learned about Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa, the late great South African Sanusi, and in that video, I left out some major elements of his story, some intentionally and some unintentionally. But let's begin with the former. In that very episode, I introduced the story of the Nomo, the super intelligent amphibious beings from the Sirius star system who brought humans to Earth in a giant egg and whose descendants remain in our oceans in the form of dolphins. And as wild of a tale as that may sound, there's another group of indigenous people who Credo may have borrowed from that not only have a form of this story, but have made it the bedrock of their religion. I'm talking about the Dogon Tribe from Mali in northwest Africa. Though they live modestly and may appear to be simple folk, that is a purposeful misdirection, because the Dogon have some of the most advanced astrological knowledge that has baffled and broken many egos of modern Westerners. Dig this. The place that the Dogon associate the Nomo with is the star they call Potolo, named after the Digitaria seed, the smallest seed known to the Dogon. Potolo is said to be the smallest star in the sky, invisible to the naked eye, yet made of the heaviest material. They say it revolves around Sigitolo, or Sirius, every 50 years and is at the center of their cosmology and cosmogony. This has fascinated anthropologists and astrologists alike because, as we later discovered with our fancy telescopes, Sirius, the dog star, is actually a binary star system with its companion, Sirius B, as a white dwarf, invisible to the naked eye, with a 50-year orbit and made up of highly dense, degenerate matter. So how did these people with no telescopes know so much about Sirius B? the star they themselves admit is invisible to the naked eye before it was formally discovered. If you ask them, they'll tell you something very pertinent to this video's topic.
You know the element that you call aliens? In our cultures, we look at them as gods. We look at them as divinities. We look at them as entities, part of the universe. Entities, part of the universe that have a way of manifesting themselves in our reality, which is a 3D reality. So in the divination, the levels are big, because we have the hierarchy that is like, it goes from what we call like the creator gods. We have to go from the creator gods to the gods that are created. Okay? And then from the creator gods to the gods that are created, human don't have access. Human being. We don't have access to the creator gods. We don't have access to the gods that are created. But we start having access to them only when we're able to go through our ancestors.
So to gain knowledge about the cosmos, the Dogon go through their ancestors. Interesting. Because according to the legendary book, The Pale Fox, the Dogon say the Nomo are the ancestors of men. To learn just what that means, let's go on a ride through the story of the Dogon creation myth. Before the beginning of the universe, the creator god, Amma, was inside a cosmic ball called Amma's egg. There was nothing outside this egg, and the egg itself was made up of 4 clavicles representing the 4 elements. With Amma's thought, he sprung forth the elements from his egg and made designs which formed beings into existence. But Amma was dissatisfied with his work and destroyed it. In his second draft, he created a new class of beings, the Nomo Anagono, sets of male twins tasked as Amma's sentinels to oversee the progress of his new universe. These Nomo Anagono, who are described as the primordial ancestors, are identified with the Silurus, the catfish. More than this, the Nomo were bestowed with the Word, or the ability to manifest in our universe, and they are categorized thusly. The Nomo Dai, the first, was created to remain in heaven with Amma as his agent and regulator of the sky atmosphere. It would dispense rain, lightning, and the rainbow, which the Dogon call Nomo Sizu, the path of the Nomo. And most importantly, the Nomo Dai was made to be, quote, the guardian of the spiritual principles of living beings on earth. The Nomo Titiyene, the second type, was the messenger, assistant, and protector of the spiritual principles of the first, the Nomo Dai. It was also made to be the executioner and sacrificer. O-Nomo, the third, was also known as Nomo of the Pond, whose destiny was to be sacrificed for the purification of Amma's new creation, and its destiny was to, quote, resurrect in human form and descend to earth in an ark with the ancestors of man, created from the substance of its placenta. It will take on its form again and reside in the waters and give birth to many offspring. But this heavenly plan laid out for Amma's second creation was thwarted, for a fourth type of being was created. O-Nomo's twin, Ogo, rebelled against Amma. Ogo was arrogant and claimed he knew just as much as Amma did. Desiring to create his own universe, he began weaving himself an egg-like ark, where he would spring forth. For his impudence, Amma punished him by cutting out a vein in his tongue, depriving him of the full pitch of his voice, or partially of his bestowal of the word. Despite the mutilation of Ogo's tongue, he was still able to manifest, although this manifestation wasn't quite right. He left his placenta, or his mother, prematurely, and while still attached to it, sowed pure chaos. Attempting to fix his mayhem, Amma turned Ogo's placenta ark into earth. But Ogo burrowed into the earth, which is described as an incestuous act. and the spawn of this act were beings called the Yeban, who were, and I quote, small creatures with big heads, discolored bodies, and frail limbs who for shame of their condition hide in the holes of the earth. Desiring to right the wrongs of Ogo, Amma had to punish him, but by doing this he also punished his twin, Onomo, who became Nomosenu, or the victim when sacrificed. This sacrifice was highly graphic. The Nomotitiene, if you remember, was the sacrificer and executioner. It folded the victim's genitals and then cut them off, which is known as the emasculation of the victim. The Dogon say that Sigitolo, Sirius A, was born of this emasculation and is, quote, the evidence of the placenta and the umbilical cord of the sacrificed Nomo. After entering the waters on earth, the Onomo was instructed by Amma to reveal the word to man. And here's where it gets even more wild. This sort of Christ-like sacrifice of Onomo was a preparation for its destiny, the descent of an ark on earth containing the ancestors of man. The ark came in the night. Quote, it was soft and moist like the placenta it was made of. The Dogon say it was suspended by an iron or copper chain, swinging and spinning about by the power of the breath of the ancestors. It is said that when the ark landed, it raised a cloud of dust and slipped into the mud. Quote, as it landed, the weight of the ark caused the blood that saturated the placenta to spurt up into the sky. This blood joined itself with the star called Iepelutolo, the star of the 10th moon, witness to the resurrection of the Nomo, giving it being and brilliance. They say the Nomo was like red fire, for when the ark passed by the sun, it caught him ablaze, and when he touched the ground, he was white. Furthermore, the Dogon say that, quote, on earth the albino will be the evidence of the burns of the Nomo during the descent. One will say that he is the trace of the burn, the scar of the Nomo. When these fish-like ancestors of man left the ark, they became persons. Their fish tails opened into two, which would, quote, prefigure the legs of a man, and Amma then split the spiritual principles of the sacrificed into two sections, making up 8 kikinu, or intelligent souls, which would be allotted to every human being. And Ogo, the rebellious creation of Amma, eventually assumed the form of the pale fox. Here alone we have a beautiful example of a belief that visitors from the sky are also inexorably tied with the soul and with the ancestors. I have to say, this sounds strikingly similar to what Credo Mutwa said about his Chitauli beings, that they rebelled against the great god Unkulukulu, and so their mouths were shut.
African tradition says that the Chitauli where they engaged God himself in a terrible war, and God defeated them, the real God, Nkulunkulu, the creator. God defeated them, and he closed their mouths so that they are unable to talk or to eat food anymore. But we are told, say, that the Chitauli fatten on the energy that we human beings give them.
To the Dogon, the Nomo transcend the extraterrestrial theory. Yes, they're cosmic beings, but that's besides the point. If we're all descendants of a cosmic creation, then under that notion, we're all connected physically and spiritually. And what's so strange, though, is these sky visitors are amphibious, but the Dogon aren't the only ones with a belief of fish-tailed beings who impart knowledge. In the book The Sirius Mystery, Robert Temple gives examples like Oannes, the Sumerian fish deity that taught humans the creation myth, Greco-Roman cult objects of Isis and Serapis, aka Osiris, and even in China with the two fish-tailed deities Fu Xi and Xianling, who are said to rule the world from within the seas. And although it's beyond the scope of this video to examine how each of these have breadcrumbs leading back to Sirius, given the recurring motif of these wise celestial fish beings across the world, it begs the question, who started it all? This brings me to the second thing about Credo Mutwa I want to cover. I'd completely forgotten about it until I had Rhys Dalton Morgan, aka the UFOs, on my show, and he said this when we were talking about Credo.
The thing that always stood out to me about Credo, which kind of came up lately, was his experiences with the lady, which was the Zulu goddess of creation. I thought that had a lot of symbolic, I guess, references to the way that Chris Bledsoe has been speaking about the lady as well. And is that sort of a cultural interpretation again of the phenomenon? But back to, sorry, what you were talking about there, about the blonde hair, the blue-eyed being. Is that all a part of, you know, the same ecosystem? Or is that an experience that is kind of being designed based off something that's feeding into us, drawing from us to create those experiences as well, and playing to it once we have the Nordic archetype in our zeitgeist? Does the Nordic archetype then appear in other experiences, accounts? Or is there really a Nordic race collecting sperm and eggs as part of a breeding program in case we destroy the planets from nuclear war and they can rebuild it with hybrids? I don't know, but there's a lot to it, mate. As I said, I think it's hard to know what's really going on.
Not only did Rhys remind me of this vital information about a divine feminine, but his research on the phenomenon has completely changed how I think. So I want to give him a massive shout out. Everyone, please go check out his channel and make sure to tell him I sent you. So yes, Credo Mutwa did write extensively about a feminine figure he called Amarava. Now a very, very beautiful vision visited me. It was a vision of a woman with an orange-brown skin and greenish-black hair and black eyes. This woman, unlike the Zulu women of that time, was not wearing a skirt of cowhide, but she wore some type of grass skirt, or a skirt made of fiber of some kind. A skirt dyed red with some kind of clay. And I remember this mysterious creature saying to me, "Do not be afraid, for I am your bride, and Amarava is my name." So what does this have to do with our video? Well, the context that Rhys told me about Amarava was to compare it with Chris Bledsoe's experience with a being he called the Lady, another divine feminine associated with UFOs. So for your benefit, let's dive into Chris Bledsoe's experiences and then work our way back through history. The one event that everyone wants Chris to retell for them took place on Easter 2012. At the time, he had become fascinated with the phenomenon that his family encountered, but in the aftermath, a host of other experiences had been terrorizing the family, especially Chris Jr., his son, who had intense nightmares and saw shadowy beings standing over his bed. His daughter Emily also had similar experiences. Apart from the phenomenon itself, the ridicule aimed at the Bledsoe family by their community had caused a lot of pain and suffering. So on the Saturday night before Easter, after years of trying to share what he thought were angelic, positive experiences with the world, Chris went outside and projected his thoughts to the sky. He thanked them for appearing in his life and healing him, but also explained the negative effects on his family their appearance brought. He vowed to never speak of it again and went to bed on his couch. But at 3 a.m, the witching hour, Chris said he was awoken by a loud voice and compelled by a group of shadowy beings to go outside. What happened outside is truly fascinating. These shadowy beings handed Chris a small, furry, prickly thing that seemed alive, telling him to keep it. Bewildered, Chris took the thing and put it in the dog kennel in his yard. When he began to walk back to his house, a powerful blast of air knocked him down. When he got up, a void appeared at the edge of the forest, and out of it emerged a massive black bull charging straight towards him. The force of the bull knocked him down once more, and as it passed over him, Chris could see that it was transparent, blending with the stars in the night sky above. Absolutely certain the bull would turn around and rush him again, Chris quickly rolled over and began to stand up. But when he looked up, there, floating above the ground, was a beautiful woman, clad in a glowing white robe. The sheer magnificence of the being shocked him. Her hair was blonde, and her eyes were blue. She began to speak, although her lips did not move.
You know I am here.
In the regression transcripts of this event, Chris says that the being introduced herself as Hathor, but was known by many names. But at a later encounter, the lady had another message for him.
When the red star of Regulus aligns just before dawn in the gaze of the Sphinx, a new knowledge shall come into the world.
And she showed me other things. War, us bombing Iran, us bombing Syria. And in them days, none of that had happened. So I put all that on this piece of paper.
This one event has become really popular in the UFO community, and for so many reasons. One being that since the 1940s, ufology has been so focused on spaceships and extraterrestrials, but one of the most universally studied and respected cases in the US has this unexpectedly profound spiritual angle to it. And it wasn't only Chris that saw her. Two of his nieces saw a, quote, luminous woman in a flowing white dress floating over Chris's porch on Easter 2014. Now, how does this sighting of the lady or Hathor relate to Credo Mutwa? Well, just as there are many shared elements between Credo and the Dogon, there seems to be just as many with Egypt. You can see a picture of him wearing what looks like an Egyptian ankh around his neck. And in the book Passport to the Cosmos, Credo told its author, John Mack, about this divine feminine being, Amarava, but with an interesting twist. One creature, which he calls the string skirt sister, because it wears a skirt made of strings, has been with him since he was a baby. In the Catholic world in which he was brought up, such beings were either angels or demons. So I naturally believed that this creature was my guardian angel. This being, he told us, has reddish skin, intense eyebrows, and unnaturally widened eyes, and speaks through a hole in its throat. Sometimes it wears a fish-shaped helmet with a crest on it. This same being also haunted his aunt Mina, who said to Credo, "This is no devil," and told him that hundreds of Sangomas and healers in Zululand were bothered and controlled by this creature. There's so much to unpack here, so I'm going to break all this down piece by piece. Let's begin with the detail that she wore a fish-shaped helmet. In the book The Gods of the Egyptians, written in 1904 by Wallace Budge, we find our first clue. The female counterpart of Ba-Neb-Tetu was Khat-Mechit, and her son by the god was Heru-Pakhart, the dweller in Tetu. This goddess is always represented as a woman who bears on her head the fish, which is the symbol of the gnome Mendes. She is described as the dweller in Atmet, and she was in some way connected with Punt, but the center of her worship in Egypt was the city of Mendes, of which she is called the Mother. She was, of course, a form both of Isis and Hathor, and as such was called the Eye of Ra, the Lady of Heaven, and the mistress of the gods. So we have an ancient Egyptian deity called Khat-Mechit, who was known as the Dweller in Atemet. Now, I couldn't find any mention of what exactly Atemet means on the internet, but what came up for me is that this may be a way of saying a place belonging to Atum. And Atum was the primordial creator god who made the first couple by splitting. Their names were Shu and Tefnut. And in that same book, I found this about Shu and Tefnut. Thou art the one God who didst form thyself into two gods. Thou art the creator of the egg, and thou didst produce thy twin gods. It isn't certain that Atemet means place belonging to Atum, but if it did, it would make a lot of sense, especially because it references a creator god with an egg making twin gods. We can already start to see parallels between Chris Bledsoe, Credo Mutwa, the Dogon, and ancient Egypt. But the next thing I need to point out is that Khatmechet was a form of Isis and Hathor. So what type of goddess was Hathor exactly? Well, she was a sky goddess. She was the Eye of Ra, the mother and the protector of the deceased. She's the one who would traverse between the lands of the living and the dead. She was the one who would greet the deceased into the Duat. But it's also said that the living as well as the dead could commune with Hathor. And desiring very much to know just what the heck that means, I delved a little bit deeper and I found out about the concept of Egyptian dreaming. I learned that in ancient Egypt, they didn't have a word to differentiate seeing something in a dream from seeing it while awake, making its function more like that of a vision or altered state of consciousness. For those of you who have read some of the literature on abductions, like the works of John Mack, you might know that at times abductions have been reported to have happened in altered states of consciousness, akin to what we might equate with astral travel. With that in mind, though, some of these primary source passages I found in the book Behind Closed Eyes, Dreams and Nightmares in Ancient Egypt begin to take on a new meaning. A hymn for Hathor who lives in Thebes. Kiss the earth for blank in all her forms. May I pray to her for the greatness of her name, for the strength of her striking power. Love of her is in the hearts of the people. Her beauty is with the gods. The Ennead shall come to her bowing down for the greatness of her eminence. It was on the day that I saw her beauty, my heart was spending the day in celebration thereof, that I saw the Lady of the Two Lands in a dream, and she placed joy in my heart. Then I was revitalized with her food. Without that one would say, would that I had, would that we had. I also found it interesting how this book's author, Kasia Szpakowska, personally translates the word Duat, the Egyptian word for the land of the dead, as the far world, not the underworld or the netherworld. It was her position that when reading the old primary sources about the afterlife, that the Duat refers to a place over there, or far away. But guess which star the ancient Egyptians associated with Isis and Hathor? That's right, Sirius. In fact, Sirius was associated with all the gods of the dead: Isis, Nephthys, Anubis, Osiris, and Hathor. And when I read the book The Sirius Mystery by Robert Temple, I learned so much about this connection. The Egyptians based their entire calendar off of Sirius, or as they called her, Sopdet, or Sothis by the Greeks. She was tied to the flooding of the Nile, and the Temple of Hathor in Dendera was built so precisely that during the heliacal rising of Sirius, it and only its light would be carefully channeled and flooded into the inner sanctum of that temple. I can only imagine what a sight that would have been to behold. And Robert Temple shows us how there are so many hints and nods that the ancient Egyptians were just as aware of Sirius B as the Dogon are, suggesting that maybe the Dogon got it from the Egyptians. Hathor is the form we use for the original Egyptian Khether, which means the house of Horus. Horus is of course our form for the Egyptian Heru or Kher. It is interesting that the cow Hathor, house of Horus, is identified with Isis, who, as Sothis, is the star Sirius, and who is also the mother of Horus, Hathor seems to be meant to represent the actual Sirius system, the house or area in the celestial regions, and significantly the sister of Isis, Nephthys, whom I have earlier identified with Sirius B, the dark star of the system, is our form for the original Egyptian Nebet-Het, which means Lady of the House. Yes, etymology makes for really cool connections, but I think there are stronger bits of evidence that are more relevant to this video's topic, and especially Egypt. Take this passage from Osiris and the Egyptian Resurrection by Wallace Budge, for example. Thy head is like that of Horus of the Duat, imperishable. Thy body is like that of Khent Merti, imperishable. Thine ears are the two daughters of Tem, imperishable. Thine eyes are the two daughters of Tem, imperishable. Thy nose is like that of Anpu, imperishable. Thy teeth are like those of Horus Set, imperishable. Thy hands are Hep and Tuametef. Thou art strong. Thou comest forth into the sky. Thou appearest. Thy feet are Smet in Chebsanuf. Thou art strong. Thou enterest Nu. Thou advancest. Thy flesh is the daughters of Tempt, imperishable. Thou shalt never perish. Thy Ka shall never perish. A Ka is established. Thus being provided with an imperishable spirit body, the deceased goes to Nephthys and to the boat of the morning sun, Semptet, and to Ma'at, and to the goddess who commemorates Kau, or doubles, and his name is commemorated, i.e. recorded. From this it seems that a register of the names of doubles was kept in heaven. He then revolves like the sun, leads on the Duat, and is pure of life in the horizon like Sahu, Orion, and Sept, Sirius, the dog star. To these luminaries he gives a spirit, and he refreshes them in the hand of his father, in the hand of Tempt. The mention of Orion and Sothis is interesting, for it shows that at one time the primitive Egyptians believed that these stars were the homes of departed souls. Now that's a much more concrete bit of connective tissue. The same star system that the Dogon believe bore the Nomo is the same star system that the Egyptians, at least at one point, believed was a destination for the souls of the dead. Is that the type of Duat or far world that we were talking about earlier? What's really cool is if you read the surrounding pages of that passage, you'll find something even more fascinating. Thou comest forth to thy son. Thou art purified with the libations of the stars. Thou descendest on the ropes of iron, on the shoulders of Horus, in his name of dweller in the Hen boat. The Hen Mehmet beings aid thee. The stars which never set bear thee up. Thou enterest into the place where thy father is, where Kheb is. He setteth thee in the breast of Horus. Thou becomest a soul therein. Thou becomest strong therein. Thou becomest Gentia Menti therein. I read this and asked myself, who are the Hen Mehmet beings? And after a bit of research, I learned that they are known as the Sun Folk, or the Shining Ones, which reminds me of how the word seraphim can be translated to the Burning Ones. But these aren't just made-up ideas from Egyptologists. This comes from the pyramid texts, and so does this. My father ascends to the sky among the gods who are in the sky. He stands at the great polar region and learns the speech of the Sun Folk. And interestingly enough, according to this article written by Jose Serrano, the Hen Mehmet are, quote, specifically linked to the god Atum, the very same god with eerie resemblances to Amma. I am Atum, who created the Great Ones. I am he who divided up his boons in the time of noon. I am this one who belongs to the regions of dwarfs. I have taken my place that I may rest thus, for searching and going to and fro, and from circling round and round. Some scholars have theorized that the Hen Mehmet are representations of the sun's rays, giving it a more grounded, natural explanation. But of course, to my UFO-obsessed mind, it makes me think of the luminous beings that Chris Bledsoe and his family saw. In his book, UFO of God, Chris describes one of them as a, quote, 3.5 foot tall being, gently glowing the color of the moon, 2 red eyes. A glassy, translucent triangle was fixed on its chest. And the message conveyed to him was, "We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you." He also said that 3 of them made an appearance to him on Easter 2013, accompanying the lady, and were described as, quote, "glowing ivory yellow, like the moon. And it occurred to me they must wear a kind of cloak to protect my eyes from their brightness." Could Chris Bledsoe be describing the same thing the ancient Egyptians believed in? I can't know for sure, but to find such an uncanny resemblance in both description and meaning in ancient Egypt, I can't help but just be curious. But where this really starts to become clearer, at least for me, is when I read more passages about these Hen Mehmet from the pyramid texts. "I summon 1,000, and the sun folk come to me bowing. If they say to me, 'Who has done this for you?' I reply, 'It is my mother, the great wild cow, long of plumes, bright in headcloth, pendulous of breast, who has lifted me to the sky, not having left me on earth among the gods who have power." You probably already know this, but Hathor was associated and symbolized by the cow, and this motif was further perpetuated by the lady in her appearance to Chris, with the translucent bull emerging from the void. In my opinion, I think we have the same messages and themes presented to different people, but separated by thousands of miles and at times thousands of years. But if you're watching this video and thinking, this all feels discombobulated, what are you trying to say? What can these connections between the Dogon, ancient Egypt, the divine feminine, fish beings, and Sirius tell us about how the UFO phenomenon has spiritual aspects to it? Well, given the assumption that these ancient cultures may have seen the same phenomena that we do today, they would associate them with their existing beliefs, would they not? Well, I have found an ancient motif that the night sky and the waters on Earth have a very interesting connection. They are at times interchangeable. You can also find this in the concept of the firmament in the Bible, the structure that divides the waters above from the waters below, and even in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. "Hail, ye gods who are above the earth, ye pilots of the underworld. Hail, ye mother gods who are above the earth, who are in the underworld, and who are in the house of Osiris." In the Dogon religion, the first beings in the cosmos created by Amma were fish beings, specifically catfish. In ancient Egypt, catfish-headed deities were described as forms of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and, quote, "receive the secrets of the one within the earth." In the pyramid texts, we have the deceased King Unas coming forth into the sky and then entering Nu, the god of the primordial watery abyss, to meet Orion and Sirius. Perhaps this symbology of water, space, and the soul exists because before we humans are fertilized, we swim. So, could we say that these ancient cultures believed that when we pass on, we must swim again in the abyss of the universe? But we have another recurring theme with Egypt and the Dogon: speech as a means of creation. The Dogon creator god Amma used thought to form the Nomo Anagano and bestowed upon them the word, which allowed them to manifest in our universe. In Egypt, the great king Shabaka ordered a specific text on stone which says that the supreme god Ta is the, quote, heart and tongue of the nine. Quote, heart took shape in the form of Atum. Tongue took shape in the form of Atum. Quote, Ta's Inyad is before him as teeth and lips. They are the semen and the hands of Atum. For the Inyad is the teeth and lips and this mouth which pronounced the name of everything, from which Shu and Tefnut came forth, and which gave birth to the Inyad. And so, with a large dose of speculation, if certain gods or beings were punished by having their tongues cut, as Ogo was in the Dogon creation myth, or the Chitauli were by the great god Unkulukulu, would they then be half in this reality and half out? Would the side effects of their presence and interaction with us cause ripples in the veil between the living and the dead? I simply do not know. I won't even claim that this is my thesis. I'm only beginning to wrap my head around how, if at all, these ancient cultures can relate to UFOs. But in my opinion, we should be asking these questions because the purported beings that visit us over and over again present to us in the flavor of our spiritual beliefs. The most famous one was probably Fatima in 1917, when World War I was raging and 3 Portuguese children saw something extraordinary. In the book A Woman Clothed with the Sun, 8 Great Appearances of Our Lady in Modern Times by John J. Delaney, the encounter was described like this. Suddenly, out of an azure sky, a brilliant flash of light appeared. Fearing a storm, they were running excitedly to gather the sheep and head for shelter, when another flash, this time more brilliant and arresting, literally rooted them to the spot. A vision had suddenly materialized above the branches of a small home oak tree, and there, to their overpowering amazement, they beheld the most beautiful lady they had ever seen. It was, writes Lucy, a lady dressed all in white, more brilliant than the sun, shedding rays of light clearer and stronger than a crystal glass filled with the most sparkling water and pierced by the burning rays of the sun. The children's first impulse was to turn and run away, but the lady beckoned to them and bade them come nearer. "Do not be afraid. I will not hurt you," she told them as they gazed upon her in silent ecstasy. This strange woman told them to pray and to return on the 13th of each month until October, and each month a larger and larger crowd was present to witness this lady and the strange phenomena that followed, and some of the events draw an eerie resemblance to orbs. In the cloudless sky, a luminous globe had suddenly appeared before the eyes of the astonished crowd. Moving from east to west, it glided slowly and majestically across the heavens, while a light white cloud enveloped the oak tree and the children. More wonderful still, while the globe still moved and the 3 children remained hidden behind the cloud, a great shower of white roses suddenly fell from the heavens, reached almost to the earth, and then dissolved from sight. In awe, the crowd listened to Lucy's voice as she conversed with the invisible lady. Once again, she stressed the necessity of reciting the rosary to bring the war to an end. Just like in the case of Chris Bledsoe, this lady prophesied how humanity would have to change its ways to prevent further war. "You have seen hell," she explained to them, "where the souls of sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world a devotion to my immaculate heart. If people do as I shall ask, many souls will be converted and there will be peace. This war is going to end, but if people do not cease offending God, much time will elapse, and during the pontificate of Pius XI, another and more terrible war will begin, when you shall see a night illuminated by an unknown light. Know that this is the great sign from God that the chastisement of the world for its many transgressions is at hand through war, famine, persecution of the Church and of the Holy Father." In this first-hand account written by a reporter who was present during the miracle, something highly intriguing can be found. The hour advances. The miraculous manifestation, the announced visible sign, is about to produce itself. And then a spectacle makes itself present, unique and unbelievable to anyone not a witness to it. From the summit of the road, the entire immense multitude is seen turning towards the sun, which presents itself free from the clouds in its zenith. The star resembles a plate of opaque silver, and it is possible to stare at the disk without the most minimal effort. It doesn't burn. It doesn't blind. It may be said to be an eclipse in progress, but a colossal uproar suddenly rises, and the spectators that are closest are heard to yell, "Miracle, miracle, a marvel, a marvel," to the amazed eyes of the people who, pale with astonishment and with heads uncovered, faced the blue sky. The sun trembled. The sun had never before seen brusque movements beyond all cosmic laws. The sun danced according to the typical expression of the peasants. And later on, some ask others if they saw it or what they saw. The majority confesses to have seen a trembling or dancing of the sun, but others declare to have seen the smiling face of the Virgin herself and swear that the sun spun around like a wheel of fireworks, that it descended almost to the point of burning the earth with its rays. There are those who say they saw it successively change color. But wait, there's something wrong about all of this. The more I read and learn about this topic, the wilder it gets, the more muddy it gets. And here's the rub. A few weeks ago, I would have rested on the last section and maybe concluded that perhaps these visitors are extraterrestrial, but have achieved a level of technology or consciousness that allows them to travel into the land of the dead. But as far as I'm aware, there's never been a UFO crash retrieval case where the beings were physical fish people or beings that looked like the lady. There have been underwater crash retrievals apparently, so could we say the ancient accounts we covered were just metaphors for them seeing orbs coming from space or rising from bodies of water? I don't think so either. During the process of making this video, and with, of course, the UFOs' help, I realized that although the UFO phenomenon has its consistencies throughout the ages, it has also been proven to be deceptive. In 1896 to 1897, there was a series of advanced airship sightings. These ships presented in a variety of ways to the witnesses, bird-shaped, but also egg or cigar-shaped, often with multicolored lights, bright spotlights, and rotor-like arms. In some cases, these objects landed, and some claim to have spoken with the pilots. But what these pilots told the witnesses made no sense. Some of them said they were tourists, and shared their plans to go places like hot springs to take baths. Or in one case, a pilot said he was going to Cuba to free the people from the Spanish. The pilots were at times described as human men and women, with several other crewmen or repairmen. Some were told happily that the ships were powered by condensed air. Others were told it was electricity. Accounts emerged of mysterious inventors who landed and visited well-respected people in their communities to tell them they had solved human flight, assuring them that very soon their inventions would be patented and the technology given to the public. But those patents never came, and the mysterious inventors were never found. All the while, though, there were also reports of soft, luminous objects flying around in the sky, but these were largely ignored compared to the favored, structured, and piloted airships with illustrious inventors. John A. Keel, author of Operation Trojan Horse, theorizes that whoever was behind the airship flap purposefully engineered ridicule and psychological warfare to distract from their true purpose. Meanwhile, other types of objects would be chalked up to be another airship or simply go unnoticed entirely. When I read Operation Trojan Horse, I began to see how this pattern repeats itself. In the 1800s and early 1900s, when we were just beginning to learn how to fly, the phenomenon were rich inventors traveling around the world in 80 days. In the mid-1900s, when we were just learning how to get to travel in space, they were men and women from Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, or Zeta Reticulum, or whatever. When I look at these reports across history, it seems like the UFO phenomenon is behaving like a trickster god, or like a crab spider masquerading as a flower. So why have sightings of the lady returned? Has she always been here, or does her appearance serve another purpose? This deceptive nature is reflected in even the world of abductions as well. In the book The Threat by David Jacobs, it was noted how many abductees recall seeing figures standing by their beds. These figures would often resemble their dead family members, friends, or even religious figures. There was one woman who had this happen to her and saw her dead brother standing at her bedside. But while doing a hypnotherapy session, she described this figure as someone, quote, without clothes, small, thin, no hair, and large eyes. It was not her brother. Although she was disappointed that she had not seen her brother, she was satisfied that she now knew the truth. One of the accounts along the lines of this deception during abductions that really stays with me is from the book Passport to the Cosmos by John Mack, where he tells the story of a woman who goes by the pseudonym Carol. Carol had a terror dream where she was lying down on some sort of grassy mound, paralyzed. She watched as a light in the sky came down towards her, and as it came closer, the light seemed to look like an owl. Carol felt a presence beside her and looked over to see a man watching her. He had a fur robe and a headdress with antlers. At first she thought this strange man was the Celtic god Cernunnos. Then the owl seemed to change into something else as it came closer. And Carol began to suspect it wasn't an owl at all. This experience was negative for Carol, and she felt deceived. In the session with Mac, she stated, "He's phony. He's not what I'm seeing. It's not him. He's not a shaman. He's not Celtic. He's not prehistoric, and I'm uncomfortable, and I can't breathe." For those of you who know the Chris Bledsoe story, you may remember that he too had experiences with owls way back into his childhood, preceding his brush with death when a friend accidentally shot him while they were hunting. What does this mean? If you look at the literature, especially in the study of abductions, you find countless examples of screen memories surrounding owls or other types of animals with large black eyes. And that same woman, Carol, described how between the ages of 10 and 13, when she started to become disillusioned with her Catholic faith, there were instances where she would wake up in the middle of the night and see a luminous man in a white robe. This man would enter her room and communicate with her telepathically. At the time, she associated this being with Jesus, but this man had very large black eyes, and his appearance became frightening to her. So not only does the divine feminine appear to people, but the phenomenon seems to know the beliefs and thoughts of the percipient.
They know us very, very, very well. They know the great weaknesses of our minds, just as they know the great strengths of our minds. They operate in what I call the gray area of human existence. That side of our lives which we don't want to acknowledge the existence of.
It makes me think of one of my favorite shows growing up, Avatar, The Last Airbender, where Aang encounters this malevolent centipede spirit, Ko, the face stealer. Ko uses its many stolen faces to try to get Aang to show emotion. Another example is the boggart from Harry Potter, the creature that transforms itself based on the victim's fears. In many cases, it seems like the phenomenon has operated within this framework that I'm going to affectionately call BYOB, Bring Your Own Belief. One of John Keel's chapters in the book Operation Trojan Horse is called To Hell with the Answer. What's the question? And my question is, what is the intent behind these encounters? Well, one thing John Mack came to realize is that the details of abductions as they pertain to their physical aspects weren't central to that experience. Rather, it was the growth of the individual experiencing them. Many of his clients ended up viewing their experiences as lessons, even when they were traumatic, as if they had to go through these painful and uncomfortable lessons to get somewhere. And the physicist Thomas Campbell, an author of My Big Toe, has a theory that this reality is a virtual reality, which is being computed, for lack of a better term, by consciousness, and that we are the players of our human avatars in this virtual reality. And when he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, Campbell brought up an interesting theory about the UFO subject.
The whole point of it is the system wants to help people wake up. And by doing things like that that are unexplainable,
Right.
it puts a crack in people's minds and they say, there's something else going on here that we don't understand. And this idea that they live in this tight little material reality starts to evaporate, which is exactly what needs to happen for them to escape this materialist kind of ethic and start thinking about bigger pictures and possibilities. So I think that the larger consciousness system is responsible for the ET thing for exactly the same reason as crop circles.
But I have to be honest with you, the thing I have a hard time with is that although the phenomenon is demonstrably deceptive and seems to be fully aware of our beliefs, there are also obvious consistencies, a la the first half of this video, ones that make for very interesting patterns when researched properly. The best example being the Greys with their big black eyes, or the Nordics, or other beings like that. If these experiences are cheat codes on behalf of the information system behind reality, then what purpose does the appearance of the Grey aliens serve? It seems that they have a similar purpose to that of the Lady. That we humans are destroying this planet, and somebody is trying to remind us of that fact. And this is really the crux of the theme of my entire channel. It's that the UFO phenomenon is real, as has been disclosed by the US government, and there are concrete historical examples of the same phenomenon existing alongside humans for a very long time, but taking different forms and manipulating our beliefs, including the ones we have about the dead. But is it the chicken or the egg? Like, are some of our beliefs based on facts of the intelligences behind UFOs? Or has the phenomenon always been manipulating us using our conceptions of the afterlife? Or has the phenomenon only appeared to us recently and has been masquerading as divine beings from our own religions? I have a hard time accepting any of these absolutes. I think the truth is much muddier and harder to parse out. One of the things that Colm Kelleher said regarding this specific aspect really stays rent-free in my mind.
So a technology that is both influential in terms of, leaving an imprint on the ground that you can extrapolate that this thing weighed 2.5 tons, to altering people's psychic makeup, there's really no contradiction there. I mean, you've got to be able to harness and work with ambiguity if you're working with the UFO topic at all, because putting them into one box, the nuts and bolts box, or only the psychic box just doesn't work. You've got to balance the idea that a technology can manipulate human perception, and even from a long-term perspective, manipulate human cultural phenomena, as well as, operate as a machine.
A recent revelation in the UFO world is that the Kona Blue program, which seems to have been an extension of AAWSAP, was trying to work out a deal where Lockheed Martin would divest itself of some of its material to them, but was allegedly shut down by the CIA. But when asked about this, Jim Lakatsky said this.
I was more concerned about the opposite exchange. Really concerned. I felt the people who were on the other end of the phone were going to get the better part of the deal ultimately, and that to be cautious about what I guess sometimes, I don't know if engineers and physicists do this, but when you think you found the answer to something, you're all too ready to move on. The old, been there, done that, and ready to move on. And I don't agree with that. I think there's a lot to learn if you had a piece of real material. What other applications could be used?
Now, I want to know what that means. What part of AAWSAP was so important? Was it perhaps their studies into both aspects of the phenomenon, including consciousness? In Dr. Lakatsky's book, New Insights, under Introduction to UAP Configuration / Structure Concepts, one of the many tasks considered for AAWSAP was to, quote, determine what has gone wrong in our attempts to fly loaned or captured craft. According to him, AAWSAP was successful. So did they figure it out? Did their knowledge of the UFO phenomenon's connection to the paranormal lead them to this success? When Jim was asked if he had been exposed to legacy programs before, he answered by saying what clearances he had.
Through some investigative journalism over the years, I came to understand that you were read into and involved in a legacy UAP program before AAWSAP. Do you deny that?
I can't speak to that. The only other clearance I had was a Q clearance at DO.
I'm not concerned with your clearances. I'm concerned specifically with the question of if you were involved with and read in to a legacy UFO program before AAWSAP. And I asked you if you would deny that. Is your response still, I can't speak about that?
I can't speak about that.
So a Q clearance is the highest level of security given by the Department of Energy. So just speculating here, but what if Jim Lakatsky came from a legacy program whose progress was lacking? And by setting up AAWSAP the way he did, by delving into the paranormal or consciousness aspects, help solve the problem of these failed attempts to fly loaned or captured craft? I don't know. And as Jim said in his interview, we, the public, don't yet have enough information to come to the right conclusions yet. But he did say this.
Right now, the only thing I can get into is the public. Everyone is going to be able to participate in that. Now, not everybody is going to. Yes, everyone. Can't tell you that yet.
Well, is something coming that we don't know about? There's a huge consciousness shift and everybody's psychic. Like, what are you saying?
No, I'm not saying anything more. I'm saying that I don't think people need to fear anything. If they needed to fear something, it would have occurred already.
Not having all the information is frustrating. But after making this video, what I take away from all this is that reality is far weirder and far grander than I could have ever imagined. And maybe that's exactly what the whole point of the phenomenon is, to wake us up. One of the events I forgot to include from my Credo Mutwa video was when he was severely ill as a child, he was visited by an entity with a very specific demand. Credo and his family identified this entity as the spirit of King Shaka of the Zulus. The spirit told Credo over and over, "You are named Vasumazu, awakener of the Zulus, and you must help my people to awaken."
Since that time, my mind doesn't seem to be my own. I think about things that a man like me shouldn't bother himself about. I worry about people. It's sickening. I have ruined my life because of worrying about people. I feel that I want to take every human being on this earth by the shoulders, shake them roughly and say, "Listen, Pastor, there is more to this earth than you think."
I love comparing the knowledge of indigenous and modern cultures and finding that the wisest of each seem to come to the same conclusions. For example, the Dogon say that, quote, "All things are manifested by thought. They are not known by, i.e. do not exist, themselves." This same notion is reflected by the physicist John Wheeler, who said, quote, "No phenomenon is a physical phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon." So, taking this into account, a lot of the high strangeness that surrounds and morphs to our own consciousness begins to make more sense. Whoever or whatever these intelligences are that visit us, their messages are very similar, that we as a species have strayed from the path in some way, and the other side is probably feeling those effects and has been reaching out to us across history to speak to us in a language we can understand. But if we want to know more, in the style of Naba, the wise Dogon gentleman, maybe we should ask our ancestors.